I'm Jules. I'm an Ottawa chapter volunteer, and I was raised as a skier. I have grown up mostly skiing in the eastern side of Canada, particularly in Quebec and Ontario. And yeah, Allie.
And my name is Allie. I'm also a volunteer with the Ottawa chapter, and I also grew up skiing and yeah, just spending lots of time outside and biking, skiing, all that fun stuff. So Jules and I will be hosting tonight and kind of facilitating the discussion with our 4 awesome panelists that we have joining us. We'd like to start off tonight by acknowledging that each and every one of us are located on Indigenous lands. So I'm currently on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, and this virtual event crosses many, many nations, including the Washoe, the Squamish, the Lillooet, the Chippewa, the Wendat peoples, and many more. By acknowledging the land, let us be reminded of our connection to one another and our collective responsibility to care for the land. That can't be done if we aren't caring for and respecting each other. We are all here to meet the same goal, to help bring sustainability and reconciliation together. In order to do that, we must actively work to put an end to ongoing systemic brutality towards Indigenous peoples and their communities. We are aware that land acknowledgements can serve as token gestures rather than meaningful practice. So let's all take time and space to educate ourselves and acknowledge the resilience of Indigenous land defenders in the face of climate change. Please take a moment to write in the chat and tell us whose land you're on today.
So
Andrew has also posted a link to nativeland.ca. So if you're unsure of whose land you're on today, you can take a moment to follow that link. It is a really great website to continue to educate and learn more.
So while people do that, we're just going to talk a little bit about Protect Our Winners Canada. If it's your first time joining one of our events, Protect Our Winners Canada works to turn passionate outdoor enthusiasts into people who are passionate about effective climate action and to effective climate advocates. We're a nonpartisan organization, and we are really excited to be joined by Collingwood and the Toronto chapters today. Thank you, both of those chapters, for all your help and all the work you've done to promote tonight's event. Also, we would like to shout out Kunstad and Peter Shute, who own Staker Heights, a local touring location in Ottawa, for promoting our event further. So tonight, we're just going to dive into the format a little bit. First, we're going to have our panelists introduce themselves, and then we're going to go into Motherlode, a film by the Lynch Sisters, followed by a brief panel discussion, followed by why skis are better than boys from Coalition Snow, followed by another discussion. And then we're going to end with On My Own Terms by Elise Sogsted, who couldn't join us tonight. If you have any technical issues, we have somebody standing by in the chat. And we would like to thank Clayton, our tech wizard, who's doing everything behind the scenes. He's the reason we can do all these amazing tech things. So just a special little shout out for him.
Okay, awesome. So like Jules said, we're going to give each panelist a moment to introduce themselves. So we'll start off with Heidi Nixon, and then we also have Izzy Lynch and Zoya Lynch, and we have Jen Gurecki.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heidi. I'm originally from Eastern Canada, Ottawa, Ontario. Spent some time in Montreal going to school, and I've been based in Squamish the last 2 years. Currently, I'm in Wrangell, Alaska, which is home of the Pinkett and Haida, and I'm working as a therapeutic recreation wilderness guide here with Native Alaskan youth at risk, running coastal canoeing trips. And I'm a big skier. I've been skiing since I was a little one, just outside of Ottawa, and I'm super happy to be here.
Awesome. I'm Izzy Lynch, and I live in Revelstoke, British Columbia. I grew up in Calgary, ski racing in the Rockies, and then moved west because the powder was calling. And I've been here for 12 years, skiing professionally and then working within the ski industry. And right now my main gig is program director for Protect Our Winters Canada. So I'm really excited to be here and see this event unfold, and just think it's so awesome that our chapters have put all this hard work into creating these great online events. Thanks for joining.
Hi, I'm Zoya Lynch. I'm Izzy's sister. I also live in Revelstoke. Same story as Izzy, grew up in Calgary, Alberta, and then moved here about 12 years ago. And I'm a professional photographer and filmmaker full-time. I shoot all sorts of things, but mostly out in the mountain outdoor space. And I'm super stoked to be here. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Gurecki. My pronouns are she, her, and calling from Washoe Land in Reno, Nevada. I'm the founder and CEO of Coalition Snow. We're a women-owned, women-operated ski and snowboard company. I grew up in Arizona, so it's kind of weird that I have spent the last 20 some odd years of my life skiing and snowboarding, but maybe that's because I grew up in the desert. I cut my teeth in the industry tuning skis at Arizona Snow Bowl, moved to Lake Tahoe, dedicated my life to skiing POW. It's probably why I own nothing except for the ski company. And since launching Coalition, we've also launched a magazine called Sisu Magazine. I also started a social enterprise in Kenya called Zawadisha. So I love making things happen. So thanks for having me here tonight.
Thank you everyone for those introductions. And now we're going to launch into Motherlode, the first film of the evening, as previously mentioned, a film by the Lynch Sisters.
It all started on a chairlift. We became fast friends. For years, life was just simple. Adventuring, exploring, it all happened with skis on. It was pretty sweet, the mountain life we built for ourselves. We feared nothing but a life unlived. We seized opportunities as they came. And like the winter snowpack, our lives gained depth as time wore on. They became beautiful and perfect and complicated all at once.
Hey, are you skiing? That's the baby.
What's going on right now, Tessa?
We're skiing powder as a family.
Woohoo! Woohoo! Oh, Mama's passing ya.
Eventually, cracks started to reveal themselves. Relationships frayed, my marriage unraveled. And for Tessa, the phone rang with the very news she had always quietly feared.
To be on my own with 3 kids just feels, I don't know, it's a lot. It's a huge adjustment. When there's 2 parents working together, you both have that opportunity to like say, okay, I'm done. I need a break. I'm gonna lose it at the kids. I can't do this anymore. I need to kind of tap out and go for a walk or go for a run or go do something for yourself. And parenting on your own is not an option to tap out or to say, okay, I'm done. You just have to like take a deep breath and dig a little deeper to somewhere you never even knew existed. Motherlode is so many things. Dressing your kid, getting them out the door, it's packing all the stuff. Not forgetting those little tiny mittens. It's dirty diapers. There's a lot of poo involved in the motherlode. It's wondering if you're doing the right thing for them all the time, making the right choices, not being late for everything, being late for everything.
Skiing, so easy.
And it's just being okay with it. Just going with it, just strapping it all on your back and putting one foot in front of the other.
I'll take a turn on the snow skates. I can't get this on you. Hold on, we gotta go this way. Got my bribery snacks. Those are good to have.
You always think you know what it's gonna be like. You imagine it a certain way, but motherhood is nothing like I expected. It's relentless. In good ways and in bad ways. It's bringing me so much more happiness than I thought and filling my life so much more than I expected. And it's also pushed me to the edge.
You want up? You want to go up now? I know. I'm sad too when skiing's over. It's okay, bud. Do you want to go play with Raffy and Casper in your monster trucks? Yeah.
I feel pulled in a lot of different directions because I have to work full time to support us, and I also want to be a mom full time, and I also have this desire to be in the mountains. I grew up in a family where it wasn't always perfect. There were some issues and challenges, and ultimately my parents got divorced. And one thing that always brought us together was being in the mountains. And my mom put so much effort into getting us there. She would stay up all night packing. She would load the car. She would plan food for days. She always said that once we got out there, it was just all worth it because that's where she could feel just relaxed and at peace.
Oh, I love you, buddy.
I feel like I haven't really faced my loss yet or had time to come to terms with my loss yet. One of the hardest things has been to watch my kids struggle. They've dealt with it in really different ways because they're super different kids. Raffy just became very needy and wanted me to hold him more. I couldn't get out of his sight, had to be super close to him all the time. And with Casper, it's been a really different journey.
He's just been really angry. Anger has kind of been the main outlet. It's been a huge challenge to walk through that with him and encourage him and love him through it.
Okay, Casper, let's change our attitude. Stop calling everybody idiots and let's just have fun. Let's teach Malto how to ski. Are you gonna come with me?
Find me when you're down. I'll come around. Find me when you're alone.
When ski season started this year, I got out our bag that we always load up with all of our ski gear. I packed it with all of our stuff, carried it out to the truck, and it felt so heavy. And I thought, holy smokes, am I actually gonna do this? Like, to carry this 60-pound bag every day. My back was sore, my arms were hurting. And as we sort of figure out systems and we adapt to it, my body's gotten stronger. Even though the weight isn't any lighter, the bag isn't any lighter, it all of a sudden makes it feel less hard.
I will love you long. I may do wrong, 'cause I grow tired. Free my life.
Butter sandwich. What about a peanut butter?
What do you think?
Take it one step at a time.
You're not in this on your own. Oh, darling, I would never let you go. Oh, I'm willing to do anything if I have you. Darling, no matter what it takes, we'll make it through. No matter what it takes, we'll make it through.
I don't have many fancy things to my name.
We can't wish for a lighter load, but we can always find peace in the present moment. This life isn't what we expected, but this is where we realize the chance to bear the mother load is a privilege. So whatever it is we're carrying, you'll find us right here.
Thank you, Izzy and Zoya, for sharing such a personal and I'm sure close to your heart story. And watching you how to ski reminds all of us who grew up skiing about all those times that mom and dad carried you home in from the car while you pretended to be asleep. So our first question for you guys is, what is your favorite memory or your earliest your favorite memory from when you were a kid or when you started skiing that kind of you consistently go back to as this is when I almost learned how to love the sport?
Well, we grew up skiing at this little mountain in Alberta called Fortress Mountain. And yeah, I guess when I think of skiing in my childhood, it's there. And we had all these families come together every weekend, and we would stay in these dorm rooms up there and that were in the lodge. And we would just kind of take over the lodge and have big potlucks every night. And some kids would go out skiing, some would play in the lodge, some would be in the daycare. And I don't know, it just felt like a really free experience. There was a lot of freedom and a lot of community because we went up there with the same families every weekend. And then, yeah, I remember being out skiing and falling and getting stuck in the powder, and you're so little that you can't get up. And it's just an awesome place to grow up and, establish that love for the sport.
Yeah, and our parents weren't really super strict about, we didn't have to be out the door skiing, at 8 every morning. It was kind of it was just you could do, if you didn't feel like skiing, you could stay in and color, or you could play hide and go seek. It was a very, Izzy said, a very free experience where we were just, I don't know, we were just kind of able to do whatever we wanted, but we were there together as a family. And yeah, I don't know, it just, we never had rules.
Sounds like it lent itself to a lifelong love for skiing for you too.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about that, and I realized that a memory that recently came up for me that I hadn't thought of in so long was actually cross-country skiing to our cabin in the wintertime in the Laurentians of Quebec. And at the time it was kind of fun, but also kind of a slog because you're just kind of walking in snow. And then when we got there, my parents we would bring out meat and cheese and put it on a board. And I realize now that's literally what I do all the time because I only ski tour. I don't ride resorts anymore. And oftentimes the food that I bring is, a huge part of the day. So yeah, I recently kind of thought of that, and I'm super grateful, and I hold that memory dearly now.
I love hearing about everyone's that you grew up doing this. I didn't start skiing and snowboarding until I was 16 and never have been with my family. It was never part of my family. We never went. And but I remember the first time that my friends took me up and brought me up to the very top of the mountain. It was my first day. That worked out really well, trying to get down. I think that was a few hours, but for some reason I was I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing this. I didn't even care that it was the biggest struggle all day long. I probably got 2 runs in, and then that was just, there was just something about being in the mountains that really did it for me.
That's awesome. Thanks everyone for sharing. Okay, so the next point that we wanted to cover is if everyone could share a time that you felt challenged as someone who identifies as a woman in the outdoor industry and the ski industry, and how did you overcome that challenge? So, we might end up diving into some deeper topics here, such as the wage gap in the outdoor industry, sponsorships, prize money, anything, under that umbrella that you want to talk about would be great to hear everybody's opinions.
I'll start. Before I started kind of free skiing and my career as a photographer, I actually was a Nordic ski jumper. in basically from age 8 to 18. And I spent 2 years on the Canadian team when I was kind of 15 to 17. And in that time, while I was ski jumping, I was also advocating for women's ski jumping to be included in the Olympics. So it was finally included in 2014 at the Sochi Olympics. But it was a lot of hard work to get to that point. And basically, yeah, it was, we filed a complaint with the Human Rights Commission. We went to the BC courts to basically sue the Vancouver Olympic Committee. So full spectrum. But yeah, we had the judge came back and told us that women ski jump, we were being discriminated against because we were women, but there was nothing that they could do about it because the International Olympic Committee makes all the decisions about what sports can be in or not. So yeah, that was pretty crazy to be told that I wasn't allowed to compete in the Olympics because I was a woman. I think that was like probably one of the highest levels of challenge and discrimination that I've ever experienced.
It's a big one. Yeah, watching Zoya go through that was like pretty, I remember, you know, we were young, but I was always kind of blown away by how hard her and her teammates worked to get in. And they pushed really hard to get into Vancouver, the Vancouver Olympics, and then it was denied. And that was like super, super sad and frustrating. And especially because for us being in Canada and there was so much hype about like hometown, you know, home country Olympics. So yeah, that was crazy. On my end of things, I mean, just some challenges. Like, it's funny, it has shifted over the past few years, I found a little bit, and it depends on kind of who you're working with in the industry, but just a lot of like, it was quite lonely at first being a professional female skier, and you go on trips and like, you were always the only girl. There were, you know, the whole production crew would be male, and then there might be like multiple male athletes, and then they would always have like kind of the token female athlete. So and then not being able to share that experience with kind of people that were, yeah, on the same page as you, or you're rooming alone, or you're in a room with a bunch of boys or whatever, and it's definitely trickier.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Jen or Heidi, do either of you have anything to add?
I mean, I feel like every day is a day to think about what it's like to be a woman in the ski industry. I don't think that there's like, I just feel like we're constantly navigating it from a business standpoint. There's very few women in business in snow sports. So, you know, when I started Coalition, one of the main reasons was to address the representation of women in snow sports. And women have become really trendy. We're pretty trendy now. That's been happening for a while. And it'll be interesting to see what actually happens, like if there's significant, like actual tangible change in the industry, or if marketing campaigns just seem, you know, to do it for people. But I think that the, you know, work that needs to be done is certainly around equal pay, both from the competition side, but also just people who, you know, work on the business side of things. Just also having more women in leadership positions. So there's very few women who hold any sort of C-suite or executive position in all of snow sports. And the way that you perceive the world significantly impacts the way that you run your business. So with this industry continue to be run by predominantly cis white men, you know, that is their experiences and their worldview shapes an industry. And it's, you know, it's time for a lot more people to be a part of that. And some of the things that we face are just sort of like, you know, your obvious gender bias, and often, you know, sometimes there's downright sexism, but I've just found that, you know, talking about it and being really direct and honest and just calling it out is really helpful in helping other people see that they're not alone and that we actually can come together. And I think we have to just be really bold and outspoken about these things, or else we're not going to see any change. And, this week was Equal Pay Day for white women in the US. And, the rate that we're at, it's something like almost 300 years until we'll make the same amount of money if we don't do anything about it. And we've made it, but friends, we've come a long way in the last 25 years because we make 8 cents more than we did 25 years ago. So this is where like all the marketing doesn't do it for me. Like, I don't care what your Instagram looks like. It's not enough. I want to get behind the scenes and see what's really going on.
Wow. Yeah, it can be discouraging. And I think for me, it was really hard to see like how can we possibly tackle this issue. And what it came down to was bringing it to like a local scale. So my friends and I, some of them who are on this chat, we started kind of like a girl crew, and we started trying to show up to local competitions where maybe girls weren't really present in the past. And we just tried to kind of make noise like in our backyard. And then what that ended up bringing about was like equal prize money for this one competition. So it's a small victory, but it's those like tangible steps like that I think if bigger companies see like, what, like this little ski hill is able to provide equal prize money, we should be doing a better job.
And going off of Jen's points regarding who's in the design rooms and who is making these decisions and who's making these marketing. Today, Ali and I had a conversation about the fact that neither of us can find snow pants that adequately fit our bodies. None of our friends can. And it kind of goes back to that idea that we've all heard that says, shrink it and pink it and it'll be fine. It is not fine. And I was wondering if you four have ever, I'm sure Jen has, but experienced that lack of attention and research backing what we call women's gear and equipment in the ski and outdoor industry.
Well, yeah, I mean, 100%. That's, you spend decades skiing and snowboarding and you just look at women's equipment, and it was, for so long, women's equipment was just total shit. And it was such an insult to women, and anybody who skied or snowboarded well would ski on men's stuff. And so for me, when I was thinking about starting this company, I was like, well, what does that say about the industry's perception about women? Like, do they think that we're not good enough? Are we not valuable enough as a consumer base? Like, do they not care? And so, certainly, and to this day, like, so much of what you still see out on the market is a men's model that has been shortened and softened and put pink graphics on it. And if you like pink, that's super cool. Like, pink's cool, but also not everybody likes pink. So you could mix it up because there's a lot of colors out there. And even like, I think now we're moving into a time where we're getting like past gender, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily matter if it's women's or it's men's, and there's sort of this spectrum there, but you really should be able to find a product that suits you and that you love. And at Coalition, the way that we look at it is we're just making stuff that we like. Any human can be on it. Anyone, we just make the products that we want. And I think that if you had more people who, once again, like, aren't your traditional snow sports person, like making equipment and making apparel, then we would have so many more choices, and that we just deserve to have more, and we deserve to have better still.
Yeah, I've definitely run into the shrink it and pink it issue. Like, not, well, I don't know. I guess I have personally, but we've worked for this company called Girls Do Ski for a long time, and we do like women's pre-ride camps out west. And so many of the women show up at the camps with the worst boots, the worst skis, and they've just walked into a ski shop and been sold like these soft, furry boots that are terrible. Like, they're too soft, they can't ski in them, the skis are too short or whatever, and that's like what sales reps are told to sell to women. And it's really frustrating because it's really holding them back a lot of the time. And like, the first thing I always look at when I'm coaching women is their boots. And if they're really struggling, it's often because they're just in like a boot that is not suited to them at all. It's either fit improperly or it's way, way, way too soft and they can't, you know, control their skis adequately. So yeah, it's definitely frustrating. And I think, you know, as you're in the industry longer, you're a lot more discerning, like in the equipment that you use and stuff. And so yeah, lately it's good to think about that, because you kind of forget when you can be picky about your gear and say like, send me the stiffest boot you have, and or send me the length of ski that I know works for me. But if you don't know, then you walk into a store and they sell you kind of the worst stuff.
I was just thinking the same, because yeah, like I've been I haven't had to think about that for a little bit, because now I have my gear dialed and I'm able to give advice to friends and kind of talk amongst ourselves to know what brands to look for. I think that's the biggest focus for me now. It's like, vote with your pocketbook. If you know that there's a brand that's awesome, like Coalition, like of course, like this is what their platform is. And so it's easy to tune out others when you're able to find the ones that you do want to support. But when people are just getting into the sport, I forget that there's still like all these things to navigate, and like you have to like dig a little deeper so that you're not being sold the furry, like, yeah, 90 flex boot.
You have to stand up for yourself. I mean, Izzy, you're so right in the way that sales reps and ski shops treat women. It's like one of the most awful experiences. Same thing like when you go to buy a bike too, right? And then you're like, no, I actually know how to ride a bike, thanks. But yeah, you have to advocate for yourself. So I always encourage people to do as much research as you can, and then look for community groups with other women who, you know, like Heidi was saying, like you get to that point when you're dialed, like look in your community for people to help you, so that when you go out to buy something, you're not relying on a sales rep who honestly probably actually doesn't even know anything about the women's equipment that's in there at all. One of the largest, a big retailer in North America, a male sales rep actually told a male customer last week that our skis were dangerous and he should not ski on them. So, which is the most outlandish thing I've ever heard. So, you know, I made a phone call to that store manager to have the conversation about what is wrong with your sales rep. So you just never know what they're going to say to you.
Yeah, I had a crazy thing a couple years ago. I was doing a photo shoot for a brand. They make like avalanche safety tools, and they sent me a women's probe, which I was like, a women's probe? Okay, sure. So it was like a pale orange color. I don't know. It was a women's specific color, and they sent it to me, and it was a 200 centimeter probe, and the men's probe was 350 centimeters. And I was like, so the women, anyways, it was the most mind-boggling thing I've ever seen. But basically, I was like, so women ski only in shallower snowpacks. Anyways, so a 200 centimeter probe doesn't work in Revelstoke. We have a really, really deep snowpack here. And it was like the craziest thing I've ever seen. I'm pretty sure they took it off the market after I made a complaint, because I was like, this is ridiculous.
I've also seen women's shovels, like avalanche shovels marketed, and they're like a shovel with a smaller blade, which is ridiculous, because like we all need the same tools to save our friends' lives if we're in an avalanche scenario. And so, yeah, having a smaller blade as a woman is not going to help you at all.
That's so unsafe. I can't believe they would even make something like that. Like we're about people's lives here. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that takes the cake. I thought the snow pants were bad, but I didn't realize that the probe and shovel thing was even a thing. So yeah, good for you, Zoya, for putting in a complaint on that one for sure. Okay, so again, really great points from everybody there. So thank you so much for sharing. We are going to have one more discussion point before going into our next film. So right now we'd just like to talk about how you've seen the industry change in recent years, and what steps do you think we as a collective body need to take to ensure that outdoor spaces are continuing to move in the direction of being more welcoming to marginalized communities?
I've seen I personally have seen a lot of changes just in the brand, like the brands that I work closely with. And for example, I was just on a trip. I'm sponsored by Arc'teryx, and I was on a trip with them earlier this year. And we were on the trip, and I realized, oh my gosh, on this trip we have a female photographer, a female guide, a female producer, a female athlete, and one male athlete. And it was so cool because it wasn't talked about. It wasn't like we're going on a women's campaign shoot. It was just a catalog shoot, and that happened to be the crew. And that has never happened, like ever. And it was I just was really happy about that. And then, yeah, to Jen's point earlier about marketing, like the marketing, you know, some brands they're marketing that they're really pushing women, but on the inside they're not at all. And yeah, that's like an experience that I've had with the brands that I work with, but some of them are, and they're making changes internally with the designers, with the management, and that's kind of where you see it. It has to start there. So that's been really cool. And then another really neat thing actually is like when I got pregnant with my son Knox 5 years ago, I guess, almost now, I was so scared. I was like, I don't have really any kind of role models in the industry. I didn't know a lot of female professional skiers that had kids. And so I was like, how do I tell my sponsors? Am I just going to get dropped? Like, I don't know, maybe this is the end of my ski career. Who knows? And I was able to talk to a couple other women that I know in the industry that were like entering motherhood, and they encouraged me that they had really great experiences telling their sponsors, and I did too. Everyone was really supportive. But there was no framework in place to like support me or just like ensure me that there was kind of some longevity in my career, even though I was becoming a mom. And but now actually in the last year, I have like in one of my contracts, there's like a pregnancy thing written into it that we're still supported. And so that's a neat change to see. But yeah, still, and I think that's kind of a hot thing in sport right now too. You're seeing a lot of that Nike ad that came out last week or whatever. There's a big push for supporting pregnant women and mothers through their sport contracts.
Yeah, and about time, right? Like, could there be a more natural thing in the world? Like, no. So I'm kind of feeling the same. Like, I'm feeling hopeful. Even like this season, like, you know, it's been a rough year for a lot of people, but it's brought about a lot of change, in my opinion. And I've been finding a lot of inspiration from people who aren't afraid to advocate for their cause or a cause. And I think brands are, going to be held accountable. It's not really acceptable to just like, oh, we hadn't considered that for, such a wide range of social justice issues and like marginalized populations. So I'm seeing a lot more thought that's going into that. And, whether they're doing it because it's just a trend, I mean, it like, hopefully that's not the way that it is, but even if they are, and we're able to kind of get to the point where, okay, like now, like this population is represented, great, like keep going. So I'm feeling hopeful, but there's still work to be done, of course.
Yeah, it's certainly, I mean, things have changed so drastically in the last year, even because I think that when we talk about, you look back to representation, the conversations around that 3 years ago, even in snow sports, and it was legitimately around white women, like having more white, like that was it. And not that people explicitly said that, but that's 100% what it was. And now we're at a time where we're having conversations that that's like white women, like that's not even bare minimum. That's like you have so much more to do to do the bare minimum on this. I do think though that, you know, there's always going to be work to do because we're just, you know, there's so much work to be done, right? Where I would like to see things change is I would like to see that these conversations about representation and what representation looks like are driven by the very people who are underrepresented. And so we still exist in a time where this framework of representation is really created and maintained by the people who are represented. And so this just goes back to what I was saying earlier. We just need people to be in positions of leadership and in power. And Heidi, I think you're totally right that it's the change that has been created is because of everyday people, just people who love to ski, people who love to be in the outdoors, people who are passionate about all these issues. There really is so much power in that community. And how we shift all of this from being a trend into being something that actually sticks is that we're talking about an industry, and the industry is driven by your purchases. And so if you can make so much change by choosing to support the brands and the mountains and the, you know, who are really committed and have a lot of transparency around it. So it has to be more than an Instagram post. Like, you should be able to read about these things on websites. You know, there should be documentation of it. And to really just look at that as the more that we come together and the more that we push for these things, the industry is not going to be able to ignore it, because the industry needs our dollars. And so we have a lot of power in that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Jen. And thanks, everyone. Okay, so we're going to wrap up the first half of the discussion, and we are transitioning into watching a film by Coalition Snow, which is titled Why Skis Are Better Than Boys.
Why skis are better than boys. They can't mansplain. They want you to be in control. They do what you tell them to. You can put them in the roof box and turn up the tunes. They're stiff all the time. You only have to deal with them 6 months out of the year. They get you off every time. You can come at them with a file and iron when they're acting up. They're not afraid of long distance. They won't get sloppy before the lifts close. They won't get jealous of the other guys in your quiver. The POWgasms last longer. You can ride them hard. They won't ghost you, and they won't eat your french fries. They won't fall off the chairlift. They can actually keep up with you on the slopes. You can't hurt their ego when you ski faster than everyone else. And when you're done with them, you can Craigslist them. They don't lie about their length. They're always ready to go down, and they only need a wax once a season.
That truly never gets old. Thank you, Jen. That's amazing. Jen, did you have anything that you wanted to add about why skis are better than boys, or should we just leave the film to do the talking?
I mean, I just can't, sometimes I just am like amazed, like the things that I put out into the world. Like at some point I thought that was a really good idea. And now everyone sees it. Oh man.
It was a really good idea.
I emailed this to you previously, Jen, but when I'm going skiing, that is what I play like before I leave the house to like hype me up as I get in my car to drive however long I'm driving to get on my skis. So thank you so much.
Yes, that's amazing. Okay, so we're going into the second half of our discussion here, and we wanted to start this portion off by just talking about things that you feel that male identifying people you ski with might not experience, or if they would have like different experiences to yours, kind of thing.
Being pregnant. Talk about skiing pregnant. Talk about it.
Tell us what it's like.
Well, I think, or more so like the criticism or kind of scrutiny that goes around like what you do with your body. Like men are never have to deal with that, but like for example, yeah, what you do with your body, what you do with your kids. There's a lot of, I've definitely, exposed myself to some of that. Like I continued skiing through my pregnancies and like had some criticism for it. When my son was like 1, we put out Zoya and I released our first film, Kindred. And there's a scene in it where I'm skiing with him on my back, and like that just people really got really upset about that. And it was interesting. But anyway, yeah, more like what you do with your body. And I don't think they deal with that very much.
I think that they, like, one of the things I feel like I experienced a lot this winter, and I don't know if anybody else has, skiing at the resort during COVID, certainly been challenging just in terms of like, you want to maintain some space because of COVID. But then I feel like on powder days, the men there's like just this aggression, there's just this energy. And I love like, that's what I live for. But that like physical space and men not understanding that, like, when you push up against somebody and you're like, there's fear involved in that. Like, I don't know what you're doing and you're aggressive. And I think that men just don't think about that like they're just out there thinking that, hooting and hollering and skiing POW is like this fun thing. And it's like, yeah, but when you're like literally like an inch away from me, I don't know what it is that you're going to do. And that like physical space and the safety, and just, I just think women deal with that all the time in everything that they do. Just like wondering what is he doing and why is he doing it and what is the next thing?
I think of it more in terms of like tripping, because in the program that I work in, we're in the backcountry for like almost 50 days. And so if you think of like an overnight trip, it's pretty easy for guys to just up and leave. And there's just a lot of like anxiety and extra stuff that we have to think about when we're like packing and preparing and looking at a calendar of when we're heading out on a backcountry trip. So I think those are like the biggest ones for me right now, because I'm living it currently. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just how about having your period when you're skiing or working? Like for me, I work super long days shooting. I'm in the backcountry all the time. And sometimes like, it's so hard to plan for and prepare. And it's just one more thing to think about. Sometimes, yeah, I don't know. You just can't control it. Sometimes they'll be out there, you have cramps, you're bleeding. There's nothing you can do. You have no privacy. That's definitely something that we have to think about.
I kind of like that you're willing to get into it a little bit more. So let's spell it out for some of the viewers who may not know. So first of all, you have to wipe when you go pee, or else you might get a UTI. It's not so easy as just turning around and pulling your pants down. Like you gotta like find a spot, and then you have to like squat on your skis, and then you have to like check like if no one's coming. And then you either have to use like something like a Kula cloth that you can like keep like on your bag that you can rinse out every once in a while. But if you live somewhere like in Southeast Alaska where it's raining, 75% of the year, like that doesn't work. So then you have to carry around like a bag that you then you have to like carry around a bag with toilet paper. So you like put it like in your jacket. You have to like keep it wet. So you have to have like a good like Gore-Tex layer that you're like, got to keep that toilet paper dry. And then you have to then put it in a bag, and then you have to find a time to dispose of it. And yeah, if it's your time of month, then it's either, you're dealing with like a Diva cup or tampons or etc. And then you're thinking, you know what, it's bear season also. So I'm going to have to find a time to like get rid of this soon. And then you potentially worry about that at night, because if you're like in a tent or under a tarp or something, yeah, you know what, there's just a lot on the mind. So couple insights there.
Yeah, I think men, the thing, and first of all, like, I love some men. There's some who are great. Like, there's probably some on this call who are like, not me. Okay, we see you. We know that there's some good ones, and I occasionally enjoy your company and don't like to give you cookies, but when you do a good job, like, certainly you'll get, you know, nice pat on the back. But I think the thing with men is that, like, they don't understand a world in which they are not the center of it, in which they are not normal, like the most normal, like, where everything is compared against a white man. And what would it look like if that changed, if they weren't this pillar compared to, like, we are compared as skiers against men. We are compared with the way that we look, the way that we act, everything's compared to them. And I think that they don't necessarily actually, like, no, I don't know if they realize that just their existence and how we constantly just are being compared to them, and we don't get to exist as just like, this is it. Like, we just show up and here we are. There's always something else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that leads really well into our next discussion point, which we tried to come up with like a clever way to word this or to form this into a question, but we decided to just word it as 2 words: bro culture, go. That's all we got.
It's old, it's boring, it's not fun.
I think that we should put that on a t-shirt, Jen, and then everyone can wear them.
Next Coalition Snow merch drop.
Yeah, I don't even have anything to say about bro culture. I feel like we're past, well, I hope so. I mean, I'm personally past it. I'm 35 now, like, bro culture, I like don't even see it anymore. But I think, yeah, maybe in my younger days I was like more aware of it or surrounded by it.
Yeah, I think the cool thing too these days with social media is like we can finally control the narrative of like how we see ourselves and how we want to be represented. It's not just the like shrink it and pink it, like here's what you get, ladies, for your skis and your probes and whatever. So we can say what we want, we can post what we want, and we can control our narrative. And so I think that's definitely really squished bro culture quite a bit. And yeah, whether or not anyone's making space for us, we are just taking up space on our own terms, because we all have platforms now and we all have voices.
I think people are over it, like just seeing like the trends in the film, like ski film world too, you know, like ski porn is getting phased out, like people are bored of it, and so now there's a lot more opportunity for storytelling, and like, you know, women excel at storytelling and sharing, you know, like personal experiences and stuff like that. And so we're seeing, because of that, there's been a shift in like there's more women-made films featuring women, and that's been really cool to see as well.
So speaking about welcoming more people into spaces, and we touched on it earlier, this is kind of a 2-point question. First, we talk about how we want to make skiing more accessible and more welcoming to a ton of different groups. However, we often ignore the huge buy-in cost that skiing has. Because a ton of us will be like, it just matters that you get outdoors. The best possible pair of skis for you is skis that are in your budget, that you feel comfortable skiing on. But that still is X hundred amount of dollars. And that still is a lift ticket, because you don't get to ski in the backcountry without having skied kilometers and kilometers and kilometers. of inbound skiing. So accessibility in skiing is kind of what we want to touch on right now. And how can we make these things like more accessible to people who aren't just sitting on piles of hundreds of dollars?
I think, there's a number of resorts that have really outstanding beginner ski programs where you can get reduced cost of lift tickets. And I know that that's something that's been growing more. I also think like looking at your indie ski resort, like these small independent resorts tend to be so much more affordable because there's no granite countertop and there's no fancy parking and there's, so I think that there's, when we think about what the skiing experience could look like, we're kind of being sold a narrative right now that it's sort of something that should be like higher end in these big resorts, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. I think also like used gear is fantastic. And honestly, it doesn't matter what you look like when you go skiing. So we don't need new jackets and new pants. You don't have to look cool. And actually 100% you can ski in jeans as long as it's not a safety issue because cotton kills. We know that, right? But like you can, there's just so much pressure around the way to look. And I would just say that like not having to fit in that. And obviously like all of us on this panel are super privileged because I bet none of us buy any of our shit anymore, like at all. So there's a lot of privilege that goes into us being able to have that conversation. I would also say that like, this isn't a problem for nonprofits to solve. This is a problem for the business community to solve, because they're the one, like when you look at shifting demographics, particularly, I can speak to the United States of like, what the future of this country looks like. We're just going to be missing out on a lot of participants, and it's already hard enough with climate change to be in this industry and to run a business that we really kind of have to look at how, like, what are all the things that we can do. So like at Coalition Snow, for example, I have slated for next year's production more than 40 pairs of skis and snowboards that we're comping, that we're giving away. And we have a whole process to ensure that the BIPOC community is going to receive those skis and boards. And so there's decisions that you can make at the company level to make it more accessible. And I think if every company sort of like pitched in and thought about doing that, that could help a little bit too.
That's amazing. Nice work, Jen. Totally. Yeah, I think it's I feel a lot of guilt sometimes because it's a hugely, like, you have to be very privileged to participate in skiing. And yeah, we often talk about like how rich our lives are because of skiing, and everyone should get out in the great outdoors, but it's not that easy. There's a lot of barriers for a lot of people. Yeah, one thing we've seen like locally here, I think the resorts that are in the community, like they have to kind of take some responsibility for taking care of the community that takes care of them. And here in Revelstoke, this year they've had tons of local days, but you can pay $10 for a lift ticket, $10 for a rental, and $10 for a lesson. And you just have to bring a donation to the food bank for that. So locals that's been a really amazing initiative because tons of families in town can't afford to buy their kids passes or get out regularly. So that's cool. And I think it'd be cool to see more and more resorts doing that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's an amazing opportunity to showcase winter and how amazing winter can be. And unfortunately, a lot of people dread winter. And I hear it oftentimes, like living in Montreal in public transit, people are like, can you believe it's snowing? Or it's so cold, it sucks. And I'm like, what do you mean it sucks? Like, winter's amazing. And maybe if more people were able to experience the joys of winter, then we would just be a little bit happier. And those dark nights and shorter days would be a little bit easier. So I think there was a program I was doing some work with in Montreal, and it was ahead of its time, and it's introducing like new Canadians to winter sports. And so whether that's they had a ski hill that was literally like at a metro station in town on like a tiny hill, and you just hike up, and they had rentals there. And so just looking smaller scale and like, yeah, more of that kind of backyard focus, where it doesn't, introduction to skiing doesn't need to mean, you know, going up a massive mountain and getting all the gear. It can be, you know, Jen skiing in jeans and just you know, a couple turns, like cross country skis, snowshoes, whatever. And then from there, maybe you kind of begin to foster a bit of curiosity and hope that there are opportunities. And then, you know, being able to bring those opportunities to people. How do people find out about things? Like, I don't know. Yeah, we need to do a better job at like, there's a lot of programs that exist that people don't know about. So that education piece comes around as well. I'm like, it really intrigued, and I think there's a huge market, especially for yeah, new Canadians or people just like don't like winter, that we could tap into and like try to turn that around a little bit.
I really like what you're saying there, Heidi, because I think that people spend money on the things that they really want in their lives. And this is something that I've seen in some of maybe the most obscure places, like in the work that I've done in East Africa, in rural villages. The women who I work with spend money on solar TVs. They don't have running water, they don't have electricity, but they want the TV and they will find a way to get it. And so I think that there's this, certainly cost is a major issue. I'm not saying that it's not, it absolutely is. And people also save and find ways and investigate to do the things that they love. But if we as an industry aren't creating a welcoming environment and an inclusive environment that makes people want to do those things, then it actually doesn't matter how much it costs, because no one's going to spend anything on something that they don't want. And so, and Izzy, I would absolutely agree with you too, that like ski porn is dead, right? Like no one's really interested in looking at that. And so even just representing the experience on the mountain in a different way certainly brings more people in. And that, you know, that's going to make a big difference around the inclusivity, sort of above and beyond the actual hard cost of things.
Heidi, oh, sorry, go ahead, never mind.
Well, this won't be a long point, but I also think that when people are able to enjoy and experience something like the outdoors, or like a beautiful winter day on skis outside, then they're more likely to care about it, and then in turn, hopefully protect it or want to protect it and feel some sort of ownership.
Heidi, thank you for making my transition so much easier. So first of all, the like checking your privilege of getting outside thing, very, very true. I go to school in the States. I grew up in the Ottawa Valley. A few weeks ago, I was talking to my father and I was like, Dad, like all these people hate winter. And he's like, Jules, you have everything you need for winter. They're not used to the like -25 temperature. They did not grow up skiing in that. So check yourself. My dad's from Latin America, so he was very much like, check yourself here. But now that we're considering an intersectional approach to inclusivity and mindfulness in the outdoor spaces, including the barriers to get out that are both financial and coming from society, and trying to get more people into spaces in a traditional way. How do you think this will play into the discussion surrounding climate change and climate action and possible climate policy? Heidi already touched on this a bit of like just the getting people outside, but what can be done more, and how do you think it could be going in those directions? Anyone?
One of the reasons I work with youth is because at the end of the day, when there's like so much going on in the world, and how do you, you know, have fun and also give back and like dedicate a life to service? Like it's impossible to not think about all these things all the time. But ultimately, I think working with the next generation and being able to at least get them into the space of outdoors is probably like the one way that I'm able to go to sleep at night and being like, okay, like this is one small step, but it encompasses a lot, I think. And yeah, it's just hopeful working with the next generation when they're able to be out there and to either care or start the process of caring for the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree so much with what Heidi said, and how, if you are given the opportunity to get outside and appreciate natural spaces, then you are going to feel inclined to protect them. And so the more we can kind of break down those barriers to the outdoors, the more we'll have this amazing community of people standing up to fighting to protect these spaces against climate change and, other threats to the environment. So super important. And yeah, not just like financial barriers, but like we talked about, there's the whole like diversity, equity, inclusion piece of getting different communities into the outdoors. And most often those communities that are marginalized are more affected by climate change. And so we have to fight even harder to help them get out.
Well, and to that point, Izzy, like this isn't even necessarily about the individual steps that we take in terms of like, are you recycling? Are you riding your bike? Are you, all of those things are certainly important, but where the change is really to be a political level. And so one of the greatest things that we can do is we can vote, and we can encourage people around us to vote. And this is like so hard for me to like not use foul language right now because I get super pumped up about this stuff. Like we can vote these people out, like the people who want a pipeline, goodbye. The people who are, in the United States, repealing everything from the EPA, goodbye. The politicians who allow corporations to do whatever, goodbye to you too. So I think like if we vote more and just say goodbye to all the people who allowed mass destruction to happen, I think that like, to me, that's so much more powerful than making sure I turn off my water when I'm brushing my teeth and riding my bike instead of driving my car. We need to hold our elected officials accountable, and we need to vote people out who do not have an ambitious and progressive climate change and sustainability perspective in the way that they're going to govern this world.
Totally. That's the only way that we're going to see like significant change. And, we've been told that it's on the individual to change our lifestyle and our habits, but really the effect we have on an individual level is so small. And I'm not saying stop recycling and, leave your lights on all the time, but the way we're going to see change is if we change the system, and that's by voting in politicians that care, and also putting pressure on those politicians to stick to what they promised. And yeah, in Canada, it's pretty funny. Like the news this week has just been making me laugh and cry at the same time. But like the Conservatives were debating as to whether or not they should declare climate change as real. And the Liberals have just ruled that, a carbon tax has been legislated. So that's great. That's great. But like, if an election gets called in the near future, which it could, we just need to keep these things in mind and how important it is that we all get out there and vote.
And we need to think about like, why is it that the main narrative has been around the individual? That's on purpose. That's because they want us to not pay attention to everything else that is happening, and to just let these large corporations and governments go unchecked. That's part of the system. So the more that we can like really sort of like poke underneath of like, well, why do they want us to turn our water off? But they're doing this with all of the, waterways in North America. Like these are like, we have to ask really difficult questions and demand a lot more.
Totally.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. So we are getting close to the end of our event here, but we did want to give a couple minutes for anybody to ask a question in the chat to any or all of our lovely panelists. So we'll just give a couple minutes for questions, and then we're going to wrap things up with On My Own Terms by Elise Sogstad. Okay, maybe we will start the film just to keep things rolling, and then
We just got a question.
we got a question.
Mhm.
How did you all meet?
Emailing.
I would say through POW mostly.
We, one of the former volunteers with POW Ottawa is actually an ambassador for Coalition Snow. She recently moved out west. If you want to name who you are, go ahead. I know she's in this chat today. So through her, we were able to get in contact with Jen. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Julia.
We miss you. And that's how we were able to get in contact with Jen. And I obviously know Alec through POW.
Yeah, and then Heidi and I know each other through skiing. So I'd say the ski world has a really lovely way of just kind of making those connections happen. And we did have another question here for Jen. So I'll just read it out. Jen, what were you studying in your PhD, and what inspired you to drop that and dive into the industry full on? How have your studies shaped your lens on this topic? And that's a question from Kaylee.
I'm muted. Haha, I'm back. Okay. Yeah, so I dropped out of my PhD right before I was going to write my dissertation because honestly, I couldn't do it. I couldn't run Coalition and I couldn't write a dissertation. We all have 24 hours in a day, and dissertation is incredibly difficult. And I had to make a choice. And the thing with a dissertation and with PhD, that can wait, and business can't. You kind of have like one time to get it right. And so I just knew that I couldn't do it all, and something big had to go. And so that was the PhD. But you know, what I took away from it is that when you research things at that level as a PhD, like, you're forced to analyze things in a way that you never would as someone who just loves to read and loves to learn. You're forced to do it in a really, it's just like a kind of next level way. So I feel really fortunate that I had the opportunity to really spend a lot of time in critical race theory, feminist economics, ecological economics. And this was a lot of what I studied in my master's degree too. So I think it's just helped me, I think it helps me see the world in just a really different way. And certainly everything that I learned is a part of Coalition too. And it's how I choose to run a business, to think around the intersectionality, to think out, to think about business in a really different way. And what I was studying in my PhD is I was actually looking at the disconnect between capitalism and Eastern African culture, and like, how do you, with capitalism is just so focused on profit, but cultures, so many places are actually focused on people. So how have we allowed this to happen? There's like such a rub there. And so I just, I feel fortunate that I was able to spend that time in my life learning about things in the way that I did. I'm super bummed out about those student loans. And the thing about starting a ski company is like, you'll never earn enough money to pay off your student loans, is what I feel like. So I don't know if I made like the best decision there, but that's what happened.
That's super inspiring, Jen. Nice question, Kaylee.
Lily, your question is going to be answered in our next film. So just sit tight for that one.
We did have a question for Zoya. Andrew wants to know, Zoya, what is your next project, or what are you working on coming up?
I'm working on a project that I was supposed to be working on this spring, but it kind of just grew bigger and bigger every day, the concept, and we've pushed it till next year. But I'm working on a short film about localism in ski towns, and basically kind of exploring what it means to be a local, why ski towns are so obsessed with being local or not. We grew up in the city of Calgary, and never once was it like, are you Calgarian? No, you're not from here. You're not a local. But here it's like in Revelstoke, it seems like such a big deal. I don't know. So we're exploring that. We have a bunch of different characters, and we are just trying to gather as many perspectives as possible from like traditionally Revelstoke is actually kind of a blue collar town. It's a logging town, it's a railway town, and there's like a core group of locals that have lived here long before the bro culture, what is it called? Bro culture showed up, which has increased housing prices. It's made it not affordable. It's completely changed the landscape of the town. So I'm super excited about that project.
That sounds awesome, Zoya. We will definitely be looking out for that. We have another question here from Gloria. So Gloria is asking, I loved how you have all spoken about being a female and its extra challenges in a male-dominated sport. As a woman of color, sometimes it can feel like the ski world is somewhere I don't really belong because of underrepresentation. How have you guys gotten over being a woman in skiing?
I don't care. That's how I got over it is I don't care what they think. I don't care if I'm welcome or not. Like I don't know, I take up space. And I recognize that being a white woman, that I have privilege around that and safety in that in a way that other people can't. But, Izzy sort of referred to this earlier, just like you just get to a point where you're not even participating in this whole part of the industry that's so toxic and, like the bro cult, like you're not there. So, Gloria, I would say that you are welcome. And there's a lot of people who want you here, a lot of people. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter what the industry or what the traditions say about things. We just all have to show up and take up more space and surround ourselves with people who make us feel good. And you just completely don't pay attention to anything else. It's like, I feel like how you make it through each day is you just keep all that stuff out.
Yeah, I really resonate with that last point of finding like-minded people. I think that was super helpful for me. And it's pretty much the only thing I can speak to is just like find a crew, and there's so many amazing resources online. And so just like putting out all your tentacles and seeing who you can like get out with, and then it's power in numbers. You can just lift each other up.
Yeah, it helps so much. Even if you just have one wing woman or one wing person, it doesn't matter if they're male or female, but I think building a community that you feel comfortable in, and that can be this like micro thing within the big picture of the ski community. And that's kind of how I think it happened for us. Like we just connected with some really good friends and got out there and just didn't care about the big picture, just focused on what we were doing and doing what we loved and being with people that we really felt comfortable with and had fun with.
Yeah, and also like to add to that, like if you do that and you show up and don't care, somebody else is going to see that. They're going to see you doing that and they're going to feel represented. And it's just like this trickle down effect. So you could be the person who inspires somebody else and says, hey, I can do that too. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to watch On My Own Terms now. So this is a film by Elise Sogstad. Enjoy.
I didn't want to give up on the desire to film. That was what was most important to me. I just decided to kind of take it into my own hands.
The thing that strikes me the most about Elise is the unbelievable amount that she believes in herself against all odds.
My name is Elise Sogstead, and I am a professional skier. My parents worked very hard to make sure that their kids were able to do things that they weren't able to do. You know, like ski racing and figure skating, that was the other sport I did, are really expensive. And my parents didn't worry about driving the nicest car, having the nicest house, but instead put in a lot of money towards me and my brothers to making sure that we were given the most opportunities that we possibly could in life, and they worked really hard for that. So I like to think that I have that quality as well of, like, you know, you got to work hard in life to reach your goals and get what you want. I really ran with that in life in general and have utilized skiing as my vehicle to constantly find freedom. While I was in college, it felt like that was when the whole freeride movement was really becoming a thing. Once I graduated and moved to Tahoe, I kind of threw myself in the epicenter of the whole freeride scene. That was momentous. And I think that was a real catalyst for me realizing, like, okay, maybe this is something that I could get into. I started competing on the free skiing world tour and did quite well. When I got into the competition world, it just felt like that was a way for me to establish myself and get some notice to eventually get into the ski movies.
She's just full on charging, full confidence, which is basically how she goes about life in general. Not afraid to take chances and go for what she wants.
She sort of has this move where she goes like hands forward and you know, like, it's game on.
In 2008, I won the Freeride World Tour, and I thought, oh great, you know, I'm really making my mark here. I didn't really have any doors open. I think there are a few things that led to that. One being just the essence of the times that across the ski industry, between actual ski companies to the production companies, everyone had this model of one token female, and everyone felt pretty set where they were. That led me to not really having the chances that I thought I would. I didn't want to give up on the desire to film. It was really important to me, and it just felt like the next step to take in my career. And so at that point, I just decided to kind of take it into my own hands. I always had this goal to try and win Powder's Best Female Ski Performance of the Year. And to do that, the requirements were you had to be part of a big production company film.
It kind of seemed like there was a bit of like a talent search kind of thing for PGR. It seemed like a good opportunity to have some eyeballs that could lead to filming full time.
Little bells went off in my head when I got wind that I could be a part of a movie and I could create my own segment, submit it, and hopefully get in the top 10. In some ways, it did seem like a harebrained idea, but in all honesty, it's like, what did I have to lose? I want to be out there filming. I want to be giving my best at what I'm filming as it is anyways. Why not still make an edit and just see what happens?
I was like really impressed with just how powerful she was skiing and how confident she looked. You know, it was sort of like, how have I not heard of this person before?
The kind of strength that it takes to stick landings like she's stuck in that movie. Obviously her courage stuck out, but also her strength.
This was all coming together without really any funding. And there was this mishmash of camera people, but when you have the sole intention of getting out there and doing the best that you can, that can really shine through.
When it was completed and I got to submit the edit for the contest, it was like the biggest relief and the biggest feeling of satisfaction.
I didn't win the grand prize, but I was voted in to be a part of the movie, the DVD that TGR put out of the collab project. And with that, that meant I had an opportunity to potentially win Best Female Performance at the Powder Awards.
This award coming up next is for Best Female Performance.
And the winner is Elise with Collab.
To win this award is like the pinnacle, the best thing you could possibly achieve in your career. But what was really, really cool was that all the girls around me that I ski with on a consistent basis that I look up to and that I think are badasses were so excited for me.
Things didn't really actually change a whole lot for me after winning the Best Female Performance Award. I still didn't necessarily have any phone calls from any big production companies to film with them. I will say that I kind of had an epiphany at this moment.
You got the dew point.
I had realized I had put so much personal work into it that really was what it was about. I just feel at ease, you know? I'm grateful of what I've been able to achieve, and here I am getting all kinds of great opportunities. It just sometimes doesn't pan out the way you want it to, but if you keep just knocking on the door, eventually someone's got to answer.
Is the genuine excitement that she has for the up and coming female.
What do you want to be when you grow up? You told me earlier.
Did you want to be a skier? A skier.
Sweet. Awesome.
I feel like Elise really did a good job of kind of paving the way for younger girls, showing them like what's possible if you set your mind to something and just put in a little bit of hard
One day you may be sitting right here getting in the heli to go film. What do you think about that? Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be so fun. Shredded AK faces together.
We're gonna go tear that up.
Whoa, easy, Tiger.
3, 2, 1, go, go, go.
I am so excited to see all the women doing the things that they're doing on skis everywhere. I mean, I honestly think that the most exciting thing in skiing right now is women. I couldn't be more proud of being a female in the sport right now. And I'm really thankful that I've been a part of it one way or another. I'm a part of it, so cool.
So as we conclude, we wanted to say a huge thank you to Protect Our Winners Canada staff, which includes Izzy, our panelists, which also includes Izzy, Heidi, Zoya, and Jen. Thank you so, so much for taking the time to come here, sit with us, and educate us. Thank you to the audience for also working to educate us. We are all always learning and trying to be better. So thank you so, so much. Thank you to Clayton and Andrew, who are working tirelessly behind the scenes. They are part of the reason this works, and they don't get any like visual credit, so I think they deserve a lot of credit. We are hosting another event on the 15th of April called Skiing and Snowboarding in the Circular Economy. It'll be another panel type discussion with Mike Douglas from Protect Our Winners, the owner of Switchback Entertainment, and Solomon, the Solomon team. He also was on the team that invented the twin tip, fun fact. Florian Paluel, the Sustainability and Transparency Manager at Picture Clothing, and Jen Swain, the Director of Sustainability at Barton.